I always believed that the people closest to us could never become our greatest threat. It was a comforting illusion, one I held on to tightly, until the night it shattered beneath the soft glow of chandeliers at my own year-end celebration. The room sparkled with polished silver, quiet laughter, and the steady hum of conversation, but beneath that elegance pulsed a tension I could feel in my bones. It was subtle at first, like sensing a storm before the clouds gather. Then I saw Barbara. She stood near the champagne fountain, wrapped in a sequined navy gown that caught the light every time she shifted her weight. Most people only saw her charm, her graceful posture, her practiced warmth. But I knew better. Her eyes, sharp, assessing, and oddly triumphant, told a different story. She smiled at guests with the ease of someone who believed her victory was moments away. And though no one else noticed, that smile was the reason a quiet dread settled at the base of my spine. I'd hosted this celebration for over 2 decades, and it had always been a night of gratitude and closure. But this year felt different. My daughter, Caroline, hovered at the edges of the room, her expression guarded. She had barely spoken to me for weeks, offering only clipped answers and avoiding my gaze. I didn't blame her. She thought she had reasons. Reasons whispered into her ear by someone she trusted. Someone who had spent months weaving lies with the precision of a spider. Caroline finally approached me, her voice soft but tense. "Mom, we need to talk after this." Her words weren't hostile, but they carried weight shaped by doubt. I nodded, unable to give her more. Across the room, Barbara lifted a glass of champagne and caught my eye. She raised her eyebrows in a silent, taunting gesture, as if daring me to react. I couldn't. For weeks I had lived in the shadow of accusations crafted to dismantle everything I had built. My work, my reputation, even my relationship with my daughter. And the cruelest part? The attack came from within the family, delivered by the very woman who pretended to mourn alongside us after my husband's death. The central conflict now stood fully formed before me. Barbara intended to destroy me, and Caroline had unknowingly become her most powerful weapon. Yet despite the anxiety simmering inside me, I felt an unexpected calm settle over my shoulders. Not because the danger had passed, it hadn't, but because I understood something I hadn't before. This night would decide everything. It would reveal the truth, expose the lies, and determine who still believed in me when the dust settled. As the orchestra shifted to a slower melody and the guests drifted toward the ballroom stage, I straightened my posture. The air thickened with expectation. Something was coming, something irreversible. And for the first time in months, I was ready for it. Long before that night's tension thickened into something palpable, the fault lines in my family had already begun to form, quietly, almost invisibly. To understand the weight of the moment standing before me, I had to face where it all began. With Barbara's subtle intrusion into my life after Elias's death, and the fragile state Caroline and I shared in those grief-heavy months. Elias had been the anchor of our home. Steady, thoughtful, the kind of man whose presence offered calm without effort. When he passed, the quiet he left behind felt like a hollow space stretching across every room. Caroline, only 22 at the time, was devastated. I tried to hold her together while holding myself together, but grief does not make us strong. It makes us porous, and Barbara recognized that before I did. She entered our mourning with the perfect balance of sympathy and authority. "Let me help," she said more than once, her voice filled with a softness that now feels rehearsed. She sat with Caroline for hours, listening to her talk about her father, about her fears, about the uncertainty of adulthood without him. I should have seen the shift sooner. The way Caroline leaned toward her opinions, the way Barbara subtly shaped her perceptions. But I was unraveling quietly inside, blind to the slow rearranging of loyalties. Barbara's manipulation grew with precision. She asked questions about the company, about the charity, about the decisions Elias and I had made together. At the time, they seemed like the harmless concerns of a grieving sister. Only later did I understand her intent. To gather pieces of information she could distort into something dangerous. The first accusation surfaced in the form of an anonymous tip sent to the charity board, allegations of misused funds bearing my name. The second blow struck through Caroline, who confronted me with trembling hands and forged documents she believed were real. I remember the grief in her eyes, a grief different from the one we shared over Elias. This one was shaped by betrayal, or what she thought was betrayal. It changed everything between us. From that moment forward, her warmth cooled into caution. Our conversations became shorter, strained, brittle around the edges. I tried to explain, but she kept returning to Barbara's words, Barbara's warnings, Barbara's quiet insistence that she was only trying to protect her. That was when I realized I wasn't fighting rumors. I was fighting for my daughter's trust. And the woman I was battling wasn't a distant enemy. She lived within our family circle, wearing concern like a mask. By the time the New Year's Eve celebration arrived, the lies had taken deep root. Barbara had prepared her stage, gathered her fabricated evidence, and convinced herself she had already won. Caroline arrived carrying the weight of months of doubt, unsure whether to defend me or distance herself. And I stood ready, not just to clear my name, but to reclaim the bond that had been quietly stolen from me. What happened next would redefine all of us. In the weeks before the celebration, the truth began revealing itself in fragments. Small, jagged pieces that, once assembled, formed a picture far darker than I ever imagined. What had felt like a campaign of rumors was something far more deliberate. Barbara was not simply trying to damage my reputation. She was attempting to dismantle my entire life, piece by calculated piece. It began when I received a call from Marcus, the private investigator my friend recommended in a whisper, as though invoking him could summon danger. His tone was steady, but charged with urgency. "Donna, I think you should see what we've found." That sentence alone tightened every muscle in my body. When he arrived, he carried a folder thick enough to make my breath hitch. Inside were financial documents, metadata trails, email correspondence, and timestamps. Evidence stitched together with the precision of someone who truly understood how lies grow. But what struck me hardest wasn't the proof of my innocence. It was the clarity with which Barbara's intentions snapped into focus. She had been rerouting funds from the charity under my name for almost a year. She had forged my signature with disturbing accuracy, created shell accounts, and even planted digital footprints that pointed directly to my home office. Caroline never stood a chance against such meticulous deception. The realization hurt more deeply than the accusations themselves. Barbara hadn't only manipulated the situation. She had manipulated my daughter, nurturing her doubts and placing herself in the role of savior while painting me as the villain. In Caroline's vulnerable state, Barbara's false comfort must have felt like safety. That understanding left a bruise on my heart that no amount of logic could soothe. Still, I knew this couldn't become a story of quiet suffering. Marcus placed a hand on the folder. "We can prove all of it," he said, his voice steady. "But the timing has to be strategic. She's preparing something big." Strategic. The word echoed in my mind for days. Barbara's confidence at the upcoming celebration suddenly made sense. She must have believed she had already won, that the lies she'd crafted would reach their climax under the glare of my own chandeliers. She expected a public confession, humiliation, perhaps even resignation. She certainly expected Caroline to stand against me. She did not expect me to know everything. And so, I crafted my response carefully, quietly. I extended her the party invitation with a smile that concealed my resolve. I prepared the documents, alerted trusted law enforcement contacts, and waited with a calm that surprised me. The weight of truth was a strange kind of armor. By the time the night of the celebration arrived, my fear had solidified into something sharper, anticipation. Not of vengeance, but of clarity. Of finally, definitively ending the web she had spun around my family. As midnight inched closer, I knew the moment was approaching. The stage was set, though not in the way Barbara intended. And soon, she would discover just how completely her illusion was about to collapse. As the clock inched toward midnight, the atmosphere inside the ballroom changed. The music still played, the lights still shimmered, and the guests still moved through the space with effortless grace. But beneath it all, a subtle current of unease rippled through me. I knew the moment Barbara had been waiting for was drawing near. And so was mine. She made her move at precisely 11:45 p.m., as if she had rehearsed the timing for dramatic effect. With practiced poise, she stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Her sequined gown caught the golden light, radiating confidence built on the belief that she held all the power. Her eyes swept across the crowd before settling on me with a triumphant gleam. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice smooth, "before we welcome the new year, there's something we must address. Something concerning our beloved host, Donna." Gasps spread like a soft wave through the audience. Caroline, standing only a few feet away from me, stiffened. Her hand trembled slightly, and though she tried to hide it, I saw the fear behind her eyes. Fear that the worst might be true. Barbara continued, savoring every word. "For months now, there have been serious concerns about the financial integrity of the Solano Family Foundation. Evidence suggests. Evidence you forged, I said quietly. My voice was calm, but the room shifted instantly. Conversation stopped. All eyes moved to me. Barbara's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Donna, dear, denial won't help you. These investigators. She gestured to the two men beside her, the same men who had fabricated reports at her instruction. Have uncovered irrefutable proof. The moment felt suspended in air, delicate as glass. Then I raised my hand. It was a small gesture, subtle enough that the orchestra continued playing for half a second before faltering. But it was enough. Two uniformed officers stepped out from the back of the ballroom and approached the stage with measured steps. Murmurs rose. Confusion flickered in the faces of Barbara's hired investigators, who began shifting uncomfortably. One officer spoke clearly. Barbara Ortega, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and obstruction of justice. Shock cracked across her face, raw, unfiltered, a stark contrast to the polished facade she had worn all evening. What? No, you don't understand. She's lying. Donna is the one. Marcus emerged from the crowd with two forensic accountants behind him, each carrying thick binders filled with evidence that dismantled every lie Barbara had constructed. It's over, Marcus said simply. Caroline's breath caught audibly beside me. She turned slowly, her gaze flicking between me, the officers, and her aunt, her confusion unraveling into comprehension. Pain deepened in her eyes, but so did clarity. Barbara reached for her desperately. Caroline, don't listen. I did this for you. Caroline stepped back. That single step, small, trembling, decisive, marked the beginning of the truth reclaiming its place. And as the officers began reading Barbara her rights, I knew the night was far from over. The revelation had come, but the aftermath was still waiting in the wings. The ballroom slowly regained its rhythm after Barbara was escorted out, but the energy was different. Quieter, reverent, as if everyone understood they had witnessed the unmasking of a lie that had stretched too far. Applause didn't erupt, nor did whispers turn cruel. Instead, a respectful hush settled over the room, broken only by the soft strains of the orchestra easing back into a gentle melody. But none of that mattered to me in that moment. My world had narrowed to Caroline, standing a few feet away, her expression torn between guilt and dawning realization. For weeks she had carried a weight built entirely from falsehoods, and now the truth hovered between us like a fragile bridge we weren't sure how to cross. Mom, she whispered, barely audible. I didn't know. Her voice trembled in a way that reached deep inside me. I stepped toward her slowly, not wanting to overwhelm her. I know, I said gently. You believed what you were shown. Anyone would have. Her eyes filled, but she blinked back tears stubbornly, as if she didn't believe she was allowed to feel them. I thought I was protecting Dad's legacy. I thought you were slipping. The honesty in her voice didn't cut me, it softened me. Because beneath her fear was the deep love she still carried, even when she couldn't see me clearly. I exhaled, the breath catching slightly.